83-year-old William Bill Hawkins moved slowly along the crowded school courtyard, each step guided by his trusted wooden cane. His back was slightly bent, but there was a gentle steadiness in him that hinted at a life once lived with disciplined strength. He wore a simple gray jacket and a faded military cap, old enough that even the threads seemed tired. The cap drew a few curious glances, but nothing more. There were no shiny medals or colorful ribbons on him, just the quiet presence of a man who came only to witness something precious, his grandson's graduation. Bill's eyes shifted around the courtyard. Parents were bustling everywhere, taking photographs, fixing collars, adjusting gowns, hugging their children tightly. Laughter filled the air, echoing across the wide lawn. Bill paused for a moment, watching the excitement with a nostalgic gaze. He remembered when he was young and full of energy, when his steps were long and purposeful, but that time felt like another lifetime, almost as if it belonged to someone else. He took a seat in the very last row of folding chairs that had been arranged in neat lines. He chose that seat intentionally. He didn't want attention or conversation. His life had been quiet for many years, and he preferred it that way. The back row allowed him to watch everyone without being noticed. His hands rested calmly on his cane, though they still carried a faint tremble from old injuries no one ever saw. Bill had lived in a small wooden cabin outside town for decades. The house was simple, just a few rooms, old furniture, and walls decorated with photographs of the family. His favorite spot was the porch, where he would spend his afternoons listening to birds and enjoying the peace that came with age. Sometimes he went fishing at the nearby lake. Other times, he cared for the little garden behind his house, trimming roses or planting new seeds. To everyone who knew him, he was simply a quiet, humble grandfather who liked nature and kept to himself. He rarely spoke about his past. Whenever anyone asked about his time in the military, he would smile faintly and say, "I just did my duty, nothing more." He didn't think of himself as special. He was just a man who once served his country, then came home and lived a peaceful life. Even his grandson, Evan, never heard much about what he did. All Evan knew was that his grandfather served a long time ago, and never wanted to talk about it. Inside, though, Bill carried memories that were heavy, memories he locked away with quiet dignity. There were faces he remembered, voices he could still hear, and nights he sometimes woke up from dreams that felt too real. But he kept those things hidden. His pain belonged to him alone. He believed that silence was sometimes the kindest way to protect others from sorrow. Today, however, he smiled more than usual. This was Evan's big day. From the moment Evan was born, Bill made a silent promise to never miss any important part of his life. He was there for his first steps, his school plays, every birthday, and every moment he needed someone merely to cheer him on. Bill never had much, but what he offered, love, time, and presence, was more valuable than anything money could buy. As the ceremony began, Bill straightened slightly in his chair. The students appeared in a single organized line, their black gowns flowing under the sunlight. The blue and white ribbons on their chests fluttered in the gentle breeze. Parents cheered and clapped. Some wiped away tears. A proud smile spread across Bill's face as he saw Evan among them, all confident and full of life. When Evan finally spotted his grandfather sitting far in the back, he couldn't help but smile brightly. He waved subtly, afraid his teachers might see him go out of line. Bill nodded back, lifting his cane just a little in acknowledgement. He didn't need to be close to feel connected. Simply being present was enough for him. Speeches followed. Teachers talked about growth, opportunity, and the future. Students spoke about friendship and memories. But Bill's attention never left his grandson. Everything else felt distant and unimportant. He was simply grateful that he was here, alive and healthy enough to witness this milestone. As the sun began setting behind the tall trees, the ceremony ended. Families rushed to embrace their graduates. The courtyard turned into a sea of hugs, pictures, laughter, and excited chatter. But Bill stayed seated, content just watching Evan from afar. He didn't want to push through the crowd or interrupt. He preferred to wait patiently until Evan came to him, and Evan did. With his graduation cap still crooked from celebration, He hurried toward the back row. When he reached Bill, he bent down and wrapped his arms around him tightly. "I'm so glad you're here, Grandpa," he said joyfully. Bill chuckled softly, patting Evan's back. "I wouldn't miss it for anything," he replied, his voice warm and steady. From a distance, they would have looked like any loving grandfather and grandson sharing a quiet moment amid celebration. But beneath the surface, unseen by everyone around them, Bill carried a secret that had remained hidden for decades, one so deeply buried that even he hoped it would never surface again. But life has its own timing. And while Bill believed he'd left the past behind, fate had chosen today, of all days, for that hidden truth to return, a truth that would change everything. The courtyard buzzed with excitement as families gathered to celebrate. Photography flashes glittered across the lawn, and students proudly displayed their diplomas like medals of triumph. Evan held his grandfather's arm as they walked slowly together. Bill's steps were small and careful, but his heart was light. He had no desire other than to enjoy this moment with his grandson. Near the front, a group of uniformed officers stood under a canopy. They had been specially invited to honor a handful of graduates entering military service. Among them was a tall, sharp-looking man with a stern expression and deep, observant eyes. His name was Commander Jacob Steele, a respected Navy SEAL officer known for his intense discipline and unmatched courage. He rarely smiled, but his presence alone seemed to command respect. Bill noticed the officers but paid little attention to them. He had seen enough uniforms in his life. His only concern was enjoying the moment before heading home to rest. Yet destiny had other plans. As Evan stopped to greet some friends, Bill adjusted his sleeve, pulling it up just enough to check his wristwatch. Time had become an odd friend to him, always moving too fast yet sometimes painfully slow. The thin fabric slid upward, revealing a faded tattoo on his forearm. The blue ink was no longer bright, but its design was unmistakable. A winged trident crossed with a dagger, and beneath it, an old code number that had no meaning to most people alive. To almost everybody around him, it looked like an old Navy tattoo, nothing more. But to the sharp eyes of Commander Steele, it meant something far deeper, something he thought he would never see again. Steele had been scanning the crowd casually when his gaze froze. His eyes widened. His breath faltered. For a moment, he thought his mind was playing a trick. He blinked, then looked again. No doubt, there it was. The mark of Ghost Squad 9. He took a step forward, then another. His boots thudded against the ground, firm and echoing. The lively chatter around seemed to fade as his focus sharpened. His fellow officers noticed his sudden change in expression and quietly followed his gaze, trying to understand what had caught his attention so intensely. Evan noticed nothing. He continued talking excitedly with his friends. Bill simply lowered his sleeve after checking the time, unaware that anyone was watching. Then a deep voice spoke behind him. "Sir, excuse me." Bill turned slowly. His eyes met the stern, confused face of Commander Steele. The tall officer's posture was straight and respectful, but his gaze held a mixture of shock and reverence. "Yes?" Bill asked, puzzled. Steele swallowed, choosing his words carefully. "Where did you get that tattoo?" Bill blinked, confused. He looked at his forearm and sighed. "Long time ago. Navy." The crowd continued its celebration, but a subtle stillness formed around the small group. Steele glanced at the tattoo again, disbelief tightening his expression. "That mark," he whispered, "belongs to Ghost Squad 9. The officers nearby stiffened. Some turned to look, whispering among themselves. Only older or highly ranked service members even recognized the name. Ghost Squad 9 was not an ordinary unit. It was a legend whispered quietly in old circles. They were part of an elite Cold War covert team that operated in silence, without recognition, often in missions so dangerous that even their own country could not acknowledge them. Officially, they did not exist. Unofficially, they were the shadows behind the greatest rescues and most dangerous infiltrations. Their missions were so classified that only a handful of documents survived, and even those were redacted beyond recognition. Most chilling of all, every record of Ghost Squad 9 listed the entire unit as dead. Steele's voice shook slightly. "Sir, we thought all members were gone." He stared at Bill with awe. "How are you alive?" Bill offered a tired smile. "Life is unpredictable," he said softly. It was the only explanation he felt comfortable giving. Evan finally turned, confused to see strangers speaking to his grandfather. "Grandpa, what's going on?" Commander Steele straightened his posture. "Young man, do you know who your grandfather is?" Evan frowned. "Yeah, he's Bill Hawkins, my grandpa." Steele shook his head. "He is more than that." He turned back to Bill. "Sir, may I speak with you privately?" Bill hesitated. His quiet life had been carefully built away from attention. Yet something in the commander's tone, respectful, almost pleading, made him nod. "All right." They moved a short distance away from the crowd. Evan followed, refusing to leave his grandfather's side. Steele removed his hat, holding it against his chest. His voice lowered. "Sir, if you truly are from Ghost Squad 9, then you saved countless lives. My father always told me stories about a mysterious operator who helped him escape when their team was ambushed. He never knew his name, only that he had a tattoo just like yours." Bill's expression softened. Memories he had buried for decades stirred. "It was a long time ago," Bill said quietly. "Your father, he was badly wounded. Our mission went wrong. We were outnumbered. I carried him miles through the dark. I couldn't save everyone, but I couldn't leave him behind." Steele's eyes glistened. "He seemed to struggle to speak. He lived because of you, he always said. The man who saved him vanished, like a ghost." Bill nodded slowly. "That's what we were, ghosts." Evan stared at his grandfather, emotions swirling inside him. Shock, pride, confusion. He had never imagined his gentle, quiet grandfather was a war hero, let alone part of a secret unit few ever knew. Why had he hidden this? Steele suddenly stood tall and raised his hand in a sharp salute. "Sir, it is an honor to meet you." Around them, the other officers instinctively did the same, saluting the old man who had come only to watch his grandson graduate. The surrounding families began noticing the unusual scene and fell silent, watching with wide eyes. Bill swallowed hard. His hands trembled. He had not been saluted in decades. He thought that part of his life was gone forever. He never wanted praise. He only wanted peace. But fate had decided otherwise. Just then, another officer approached cautiously, carrying a sealed envelope its edges yellowed with age. "Sir," he said quietly, "we have been searching for you for a very long time." He extended the envelope with both hands. "There is something you must see." Bill hesitated, staring at the envelope as if it held 1,000 memories he had tried to forget. The crowd watched silently. Evan held his grandfather's hand, and in that moment, Bill realized his past had finally caught up to him. Commander Steele's hand trembled slightly as he held the envelope before the old man. Bill stared at it, his eyes clouding with memories he had buried long ago. The paper looked fragile, the edges yellowed with time. On the flap, a faded Navy SEAL still clung to its place, reminding Bill of a world he once knew well, but never wished to return to. He reached out slowly, his fingers brushing against the worn surface. For a moment he closed his eyes as if gathering strength. Evan looked on, confusion and concern etched across his face. He had never seen his grandfather look so vulnerable, so shaken. Bill had always seemed steady, a rock in his small world. But now he could sense something deeper beneath his calm exterior, something heavy that had been locked away for decades. Commander Steele motioned for them to move somewhere quiet. They walked behind a row of trees near the courtyard, where the celebrations faded into distant noise. The sounds of cheering and laughter felt strangely out of place as the three of them stood in the shade, hovering in a moment carved out of history. Steele opened the conversation with surprising gentleness. "Sir, I apologize for the suddenness, but Ghost Squad 9 is spoken of only in whispers. I didn't believe they truly existed." Bill chuckled softly. "We were meant to be invisible, even to time. What happened to you?" Evan asked, his voice a mix of curiosity and worry. "Why didn't you tell anyone?" Bill looked at his grandson, really looked at him, his eyes softened. "Because I wanted you to know peace, not burden." Steele leaned forward. "If you're willing, we would like to hear your story." Bill hesitated. For years, silence had been his shield. He had spent a lifetime burying the horrors of war under layers of smiles and gentle routines. But today, Surrounded by those who were unknowingly connected to his past, he sensed it was time to release what weighed on his heart. He opened the envelope slowly. Inside lay a letter and a faded photograph. The picture showed 7 young soldiers in rugged uniforms, grinning despite the bruises and dirt on their faces. The insignia of Ghost Squad 9 was barely visible on their shoulders. Bill instantly recognized each face, his breath caught, every memory flooding back at once. "These were my teammates," Bill whispered, his voice trembling. "We were sent on missions no one else could take. Missions that were never recorded, missions that were never meant to be spoken of." He brushed his thumb across each face. "Only 3 of us survived that last mission." Steele looked shocked, but all official records said that we were dead. Bill finished, "Yes, that's how it had to be." Evan felt a pang of sadness. What happened to the other 2? Bill's eyes grew distant. One died of his wounds months later, the other. He wanted to disappear, change his name, build a new life somewhere far away. I promised never to reveal him, so I kept silent. Steele listened intently. He could feel the weight of loss in every word. "And you, sir, how did you survive?" Bill sighed, leaning heavier on his cane. "When the mission went wrong, we were deep in enemy territory, communications broken, supplies gone, no chance of rescue." He paused. "We did what we had to do. I carried your father. He was barely conscious. The enemy was close. We hid in an old barn for days. I tended his wounds as best I could. When the coast was clear, I walked miles, days, through jungle, mountains, and villages where no one spoke our language." Evan squeezed his grandfather's hand. "Why didn't you come home right away?" A faint smile touched Bill's lips. "I had no identity, no papers. I was a ghost. When I finally reached our side of the line, the war had changed. They believed everyone from our mission was dead. And maybe it was easier that way for them, for me." Commander Steele's eyes softened with respect. "My father spoke of the man who carried him, how he never saw him again. He spent the rest of his life trying to find you." Bill blinked. "He tried. For years," Steele confirmed, "but every record led nowhere. He thought maybe he imagined you." Bill exhaled shakily. "No, I was real, just hidden." A moment of silence passed between them, heavy yet gentle. "You saved him," Steele continued. "He told me you refused to leave anyone behind." Bill closed his eyes. "I tried, but war doesn't forgive everyone. Some never came home. Their voices still follow me." Evan's eyes glistened. He had never heard his grandfather speak with such emotion. He suddenly realized how much pain the old man had carried alone, and how deeply he had loved those he fought beside. "I thought I could leave that life behind," Bill whispered. "Thought I could start fresh, live quietly, grow old watching birds and flowers. I never wanted to be seen as a hero. Heroes are the ones who didn't come back." Steele spoke softly. "Sometimes heroes are the ones who did come back, the ones who lived with the memories and still chose kindness." Bill's gaze lifted, meeting the commander's eyes. There was gratitude there, unspoken but strong. Steele straightened, then saluted with military precision. "Sir, you deserve honor." At first, Bill didn't move. Then, slowly, he returned the salute, his hand trembling but filled with dignity. For the first time in decades, he allowed himself to feel seen, not as a ghost, not as a hidden soldier, but as a man who survived, who sacrificed, who protected. Other officers approached. One knelt respectfully before Bill and placed a navy blue box in his hands. Inside lay a metal, polished, shining, untouched by time. "This," Steele said, voice firm, "belongs to you." Bill stared at it, stunned. He wasn't sure if he deserved it, but when Evan placed a gentle hand on his shoulder, he felt something inside him settle. Like a burden lifting. "You earned it," Evan whispered. Bill nodded slowly, tears gathering in his eyes. For so long, he believed silence was his only path, but now, standing between past and present, he realized that shared stories were not burdens. They were bridges. Through them, we heal. And in that quiet corner beneath the trees, 3 generations of courage stood together. The hidden hero, the grateful son, and the grandson who finally understood the depth of the love that had shaped his life. Bill's hands trembled as he held the navy blue metal box. His breath came slow, heavy with memories too deep to name. The metal inside gleamed under the soft sunlight, bright, untouched by the long years of silence. Its gold surface reflected tiny shards of light, almost as if honoring every soul who never made it home. Evan stood close, still trying to understand how his quiet grandfather had suddenly become the center of a story far larger than anything he'd imagined. Commander Steele spoke gently, his tone filled with reverence. "This is the Navy Cross. It was awarded to you after the mission. But since the government believed you were missing, it was never delivered. We have been searching for you for decades." Bill's eyes widened, shock spreading slowly across his weathered face. He looked at the letter again, the government's acknowledgement of courage, sacrifice, and heroism. Small, simple words on paper, yet weighted with stories of fire, blood, and unspoken brotherhood. For a moment, he said nothing. He just stared at the metal in silence. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, barely above a whisper. "I didn't do this alone. There were men, brave men, who fought beside me. They never came home. If this metal belongs anywhere, it belongs to them too." Steele nodded slowly. "And it honors them through you." Bill closed the box gently. His fingers brushed the cover like he was tucking away something fragile. He didn't refuse the medal, but he didn't celebrate it either. He accepted it with the quiet dignity of a man who understood that true heroism wasn't found in awards. It lived in the hearts of those who served without expecting anything in return. As they made their way back toward the courtyard, the crowd parted silently. The cheering from earlier had faded into a hush. Whispers spread quickly. People weren't sure what had happened, but they knew something extraordinary was unfolding. Steele stepped ahead, addressing the gathered families and students. "Ladies and gentlemen," he called out, his voice strong and clear today, "we celebrate our graduating class, but we are also honored beyond words to recognize a man who once served in silence." Bill froze. He didn't like attention. He wasn't prepared for this, but Steele continued. "This man was part of Ghost Squad 9, an elite unit that carried out missions so dangerous and classified that their existence was erased from official records. We believed the entire team was lost." He paused, turning toward Bill. "Until today, the entire courtyard fell silent. No camera click, no whisper, no shuffle of feet, just silence." Bill's grip tightened on his cane. He wished he could shrink, disappear back into the shadows where he'd lived so peacefully. But when Evan slipped his hand into his, he felt strength flow through him, warm and steady. Steele raised a folded American flag and placed it gently in Bill's arms. The gesture was sacred, slow, and full of respect. On behalf of a grateful nation, Steele said, "Thank you for your sacrifice, for your courage, for your silence, and for never abandoning your brothers." Bill swallowed hard, his eyes shimmered. For decades he had carried these memories alone. Now, in front of strangers, he felt something he never thought possible, a sense of release. The weight he had carried for so long began to lift, not because his pain vanished, but because he no longer bore it alone. Suddenly a soft chanting began, started by one student, then joined by others. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Voices rose like a wave. Some people clapped. Others wiped tears from their eyes. Parents held their children close, teaching them a lesson without saying a word. Evan looked up at his grandfather with awe. "I'm proud of you," he whispered. Bill smiled, a real, full smile that crinkled the corners of his eyes. "I'm proud of you too," he said. "You're my greatest mission." Steele stepped aside, giving Evan space to stand beside his grandfather. He addressed the crowd once more. "Today," he said, "we honor not just the beginning of new futures, but the legacy that made those futures possible." He gestured for Evan to speak if he wished. Evan hesitated, nervous, but when he looked at his grandfather's kind, steady gaze, courage rose within him. "My grandfather taught me." Evan said quietly that being strong doesn't mean being loud, that real bravery isn't about being seen. It's about doing what's right, even when no one knows. I never knew the details, but I always knew he was my hero. The crowd erupted into gentle applause. Bill squeezed Evan's hand, grateful beyond words. As the sun dipped lower, painting the sky with orange and gold, families began to leave. Officers quietly approached Bill, offering handshakes and salutes. Some thanked him personally, others simply nodded, unable to speak. Bill responded humbly to each one. He knew these moments were not about him alone, but about every soldier who had ever sacrificed. When the courtyard finally emptied, Bill and Evan walked slowly toward the parking lot. The evening breeze carried the scent of fresh grass and warm earth. For the first time in years, Bill felt strangely light, as though he'd been holding his breath for a lifetime and could finally exhale. "Grandpa," Evan said softly, "why didn't you tell us?" Bill paused. "War takes more than it gives. I didn't want my family to carry the shadows I carried. I wanted your life to be bright." Evan nodded, tears forming again. "But you're not alone anymore." Bill placed a hand on his grandson's shoulder. "No," he said, "I'm not." As they reached the car, the last light of day glowed in the metal box Bill held close. He thought of his old teammates, of faces he would never forget. He whispered their names silently, like a prayer. "You're home," Evan said. Bill smiled. "Yes, after all these years, I finally am." He had come only to watch his grandson graduate. He left having been found, not just by history, not by the military, but by the love and honor he never knew he still deserved.